So welcome to the Node.js Node API team meeting for August 6, 2021. We'll follow our standard approach of going through what we have tagged for milestone 11. But before we do that, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? Okay, if not, I'm going to share the milestone 11 and we can go from there. So let's start out by looking at the stale issues. I'm going to see, so there's no new stale issues that were added. We can take a quick look through the ones that are already tagged. This one. So here I think we had some discussion in the past on this one. I think maybe since we'll wait till Kevin joins just to see where we stand, if there's anything more to discuss on that one. Let's look at 965. Okay, this one we'd asked a question to the poster, but I wasn't quite clear from the answer. I didn't get a chance to watch the YouTube video, but from the answer I wasn't sure whether they'd reproduced or not. So I asked another question, so I guess we can wait to see what the answer is there. And then let's look at this one. I think Legendikas, you were looking at this, but I don't know if you've had any time. No, right, this one Kevin had done some research and we reached out to Vladimir in terms of React Native and support for making persistence point to, well, to make references to any kind of, I guess, object or primitive, right?
Yeah, Vladimir answered that, React Native Hermes allow to reference any kind of primitives. This is what I understood.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure. Like I says, there's no references to number/bool, but strings and references are always so. Which does not differentiate between local and reference values. All values are either references or primitive C++ primitives. So I'm not sure if that answered the specific question that we asked.
I mean, this is interesting for things like objects, right? Like how does one prevent an object from being garbage collected? Because okay, so references, object, string, symbol. Oh, I see. Okay, so there's object. So there are always references, but okay, I guess the question we should have asked is persistent references.
Yeah, that's where.
Yeah, like
okay.
when we mean references,
yeah,
we have this heritage from V8 where a value is not persistent, but a reference is. Right. But I guess we should have said persistent references.
Right. I think we asked the question. It's the wrong question last time. Trying to ask was. Do you think that's going to be clear enough now?
Let me see. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's what we really want to know.
Like we need.
Well, I mean, if you know, if the engine treats primitive values well, as primitive values, then there is nothing to garbage collect, right? And so they are
Right.
automatically persistent. So if in
I just got to
in
jump out for 1 sec. Sorry. Be back.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is if in Hermes, you know, an integer is just a native integer, then that is a persistent reference to a native integer because it will never be garbage collected. That's all I was trying to say.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, if oh, I think Kevin wants to join.
Thank you.
So you know, I mean, if primitive values are just primitive values in Hermes, then there's nothing to worry about, right? They will never be garbage collected, so we don't need to worry about what kind of a reference it is, right?
But it's okay. So like, but we create like we have something that basically says create a primitive reference and give it to us back, right?
Yeah.
For native types, would we just return back the original reference?
Let me think about that. Yeah. I mean, you know, the number 5 is the number 5, right? The number 5 will never be garbage collected, otherwise math would collapse, right? So, you know,
Was that the same? But in V8, that's not the case. That it's a
exactly in V8. That's right. In V8, that's not the case.
In V8, even primitive, even in V8, references to primitive values need
persistent references.
Well, it's more like if we get a reference, or primitive references.
I know. Like,
yeah.
You just make sure you say persistent references, because you know I know it's hard to shake this that references means persistent, but it doesn't everywhere. It seems that that's a misunderstanding here. Yeah, exactly. Need to be explicitly kept alive.
But like, we get a reference to. We get a reference. So in V8, we get a reference. So I guess, but the reference we get isn't persistent, right? Unless we make it persistent.
Yeah. So we have local and persistent, right? Local is by definition volatile and lives for only as long as the stack, and then persistent is non-volatile.
Both primitive and values, right?
Yeah.
Create persistent references in both cases, right?
Yep.
For React Native / Hermes, you think that's a good description?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm still reading the header too, because everything is defined in line, so that's kind of nice. And the fact that it's a union, I'm trying to read the header to see how like a JavaScript object fits into that
Okay.
union, because I mean, you would think that they're variable length, but maybe that's the thing. Like there's a reference to a JavaScript object that goes into the union, which is great and all, but like, is that a persistent reference? You know, what happens to the value when that thing is garbage collected? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Right. Okay, but maybe
Pointer.
this question, do we think this question should trigger, maybe make him think along the thoughts of the question we were trying to ask?
Yeah, and their symbol. Wow. Oh boy, look at that. Object, get object, assert is object, return object, runtime, clone object, data pointer. So okay, when this value contains an object, then in order to retrieve the object from the value, you clone the object pointed to by a pointer. Okay, but what if that object is garbage collected? How do you tell the runtime, do not garbage collect this object under any circumstances? Okay, that would be another question. I mean, it seems as though React Native has more issues with persistent references to objects than it does with persistent references to primitives. So it seems to be in the other end of the spectrum.
So maybe I just go ahead.
I mean, at least as far as I can tell. I mean, from my first glance at the whole thing.
So, okay, so maybe this is, I changed the last line to say we want to make sure we can do the equivalent of creating a persistent reference for both primitive and object values in React Native / Hermes.
Yeah.
And then if like they are just persistent, like 5 is persistent or whatever, and we could just give you back the same pointer, then that's okay. But we want to be able to effectively call, give me a persistent reference for this. And if it's just, oh yeah, same thing back because it is persistent, that's fine. But and same for like a deleted persistence. We want to be able to say, we're being asked to delete this. Oh, this happens to be persistent already. I guess the question would be, we'd have to be able to figure out what type it is, and then say, oh, well, those are just automatically persistent. Don't do any delete or something.
Yeah. And the type is explicitly associated with the value in here. Like basically, it's a structure consisting of an enum value at the top, followed by a union that the contents of which depends on the value of the first member. So it's pretty simple.
Okay, so I think we've hopefully got the right question. I think this one, Kevin, we just took a quick look at, but I thought we'd come back to once you were here, since you were sort of chatting back and forth. Is there anything we should talk about on this one this week?
I haven't looked at this one recently. This was still the one talking about moving the cleanup, the release call to the actual deconstructor, or a destructor, sorry. But I'm still not sure how that would actually work, because the way that his example works is like you swap the two values, but I imagine what we need to do, oh, my camera's on. What we need to do is immediately release one of the values. So I'm not sure if it makes sense to delay until cleanup of that secondary object. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure we were even like, we want to, we're not doing a swap, right? We're removing something.
Yeah, we call that reset. If you scroll up a little bit
Right.
to the first, yeah, we call here, yeah, in that template, we call reset, which is that NAPI delete reference or whatnot. And
Right.
I imagine that we still need to do that at the point the object is going to be overwritten, So I'm not 100% sure if doing a swap would
Right.
actually work.
Right. So we could say, like, based on our discussion in the team meeting, the concern, suggestion is 1 star. We are not doing swap. We are freeing the existing value, then copying over a new one, right? The new one too. If we swapped instead, we would still have to do the free as a later step. If that can cause an exception, then the overall operation is still not no except, right?
Right.
Is that kind of where we're going? Like, yeah, we could swap, but we'd need to do the cleanup, and that's so it doesn't really change things.
Yeah, if we
Right.
make any NAPI calls, in this process, then that it cannot be no except.
Right, and we need, so okay, the free requires an API call. So maybe I'm going to say accept. Now, do I have no accept in the right way? Okay, so that's fine. No accept.
I guess the fundamental question here is that, this swapping operation, do we consider this to be a shallow operation or a deep operation, right? If we consider it to be a shallow operation, then we're just like exchanging members of this structure, right? But if we consider it to be a deep operation, then we want to actually like create new references at the core level, right? And I think we've opted for the deep operation, so we can't walk that back now. Though a swap is different from a delete in a way, right? Because a swap means, just exchange whatever's inside these containers, right? And so
Right, and that's not what our equals thing is not doing that.
Right. Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah. If it's deep already, then it cannot be no except, because deep means it makes calls to core. So
it's effectively overwriting. When you do the equals, it says set this one to this other value and free the one. If you were pointing to something, free it, which I think is what makes sense, right? Like that's what you expect if you're doing an equals.
Yeah. An assignment destroys whatever's on the left-hand side.
Not to.
Right. And the concern that I have with that is like, if you just do a swap, then you're not really destroying what was on the left-hand side.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's why I'm trying to like make it clear. It's like, we're not exchanging these. We're getting rid of one and overwriting.
Yeah.
We're overwriting one effectively with the other. Because I don't think you can necessarily set, I don't think we even have, do we even have the option of being able to set a value to a new value, right? Like not for all types necessarily.
No, yeah.
Okay, so. Okay, does that seem like a good answer?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess.
Oh, okay.
No, never mind. It's okay.
I can edit.
Okay.
Don't worry. Like, what are you suggesting?
Small
It's
thing.
not a deal.
Basically, instead of prevents, I would say precludes the no except.
Sure. Where
That's all.
is
That's what I said.
precludes? Precludes.
The no
Any
except,
other
yes.
things from anybody before I?
Yeah, no, I think it's good.
Okay, so that's good. Let's go back. I think we've now looked at all those. I don't think there's any updates in terms of things that have been ported recently. I think this is a good time to talk about the matrix of tested methods. Jack, is there anything that you need the team's help with or things you want to discuss or?
Yeah, just working on the functional references. It's a test for its functional reference class. I just have a question about one of the methods. I'm not quite sure what the under like the public it has like the new.
You want to share for a second?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, might be easier.
Yeah. Can you guys see?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what these two methods does. Like under docs it says like creates a new JavaScript object, but I want to look at the implementation. It's a little bit different. It's like, sorry. Oh, it looks okay. It's a little different than yeah. So I'm not quite sure what this part of the code does. In particular, it looks like it returns the like a value, which I assume is a function, and then calls new on the function, and then pass in the arguments. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a
Constructing a new
JavaScript thing.
object.
Yeah. No. Exactly. This is a JavaScript thing. It's like in JavaScript you have like function x bracket brace, and then you say new x.
Yep.
So you can create instances of objects whose constructor is a function. So that's what's happening here, I think.
A construct as a function?
No.
Yeah.
It constructs a new Java. This method that you're seeing here constructs a new JavaScript object,
right?
Whose constructor is a function. So in JavaScript, any function can be used as a constructor for objects, right?
Yeah.
And so you have a function reference here, and what you're saying is, create me a new object using the function referenced in this object as its constructor. That's what's going on over here. So it's not new in the sense of create me a new function. It's new in the sense of create me an object whose constructor is the function.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah.
So do we have, what would the example of the code that you would use that might help make it?
Yeah.
So basically, do we have an example that calls this function reference new? That would be an interesting.
Probably for test purposes.
Right, so let's see if we can find that. Do you want to, here, I'll maybe take sharing back for a second.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So I go to here, I think here. So, okay, so I'm going to go to go into test, and we should be able to find in here, where are the, or maybe that's because you're writing tests because we don't have any here.
Yeah. I just did a search for function reference.
There is the maybe folder.
Okay.
I feel that.
Is that what you were thinking?
I don't think we have a
No,
test
no.
any calls for it.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
doing like I just did a search in GitHub, that search box, for function reference new in this repository.
Okay.
I
Let's
don't
try
code.
node.
This is an instance method, though, right? Not a static method.
Ah, yes, you're right.
So it wouldn't be listed as colon.
You're right.
Colon. Unfortunately, makes the search a lot harder.
Init function new function. Well, like we have function reference.cc. If we were to have a test for function reference new, I think it would be in that file.
Yeah.
And I don't see a test for it in function reference CC.
Yeah, I'm actually adding the test to that like file right now. Actually, like the things I'm
Right,
writing.
that's what I was thinking is like, okay. So I'm just wondering if we have function reference here. Let's see, function.
So like I can
reference.
imagine if you have, so on the JavaScript side, if you have a function that's a constructor, right? Pass that function into your C, into the add-on, and then do the new, right? And then it'll return an object back to JavaScript.
Yes, exactly.
And then in JavaScript, you can assert that that object that you got is an instance of that classes, that constructor.
So this example here, is this doing the right new?
Yes, that's
Right.
a function reference new by getting the instance data, because the instance data has a function reference.
Right. So this is an example in the node add-on examples.
Okay.
So let me just paste you that. Well, actually, I'll paste you the link. So basically the new is like you've created a function reference that has a particular effective constructor, and then that new is saying, give me an instance of the object of that function. Like, give me an instance using this reference to the constructor. Yeah.
And in this example, it's creating an object of the class defined on line 11.
Okay, thanks. Take a look at it.
Okay, any other questions or things like that that would be good to go through?
I think that's for now. That's it for now. Yeah, I'll take a look at it more. Thanks.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And probably a good time also to check in with Deepak in terms of the work you're looking at in terms of making it easier to run some of the tests individually and so forth. Anything you want us to talk about, discuss?
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. Let me walk you through the PR that I have. It's just a prototype.
So here, yeah, we'll let you share and do that.
Okay. 1 second. Where was I? Here. So I have this PR. So I am in the PR in my PR branch now. So I have added a in the package.json, I have added a npm script for a unit and a pre-unit hooked on with it. Right now, this running just a unit and then running the pre-unit, the hook is not working properly. So I'll be running let me just show running the pre-unit separately, right? So I can give a filter condition like this, any file name, right? We can give any, I guess, any file name. To be on the safer side for the demo, let me give the one which I tried yesterday. I'll give the so name here is points to the name.cc here. So what it effectively means is that run the name, all right? Run the name, compile the name.cc file. And then we have the binding generated inside the unit test folder. So we have the build generated inside the unit test folder, and inside the release we have the binding.node, the output of the node GUI rebuild, and I'm already inside the unit test folder, and I have a custom your test.js. This is not how I'm intending to do it anyway. But for now, just to show that just to show that the build release within inside the unit test folder works. Right, the generated the compiled binding the build runs. So here I'm going to do a node test, and it basically runs the test, right? In this test file, I have copied the test file from the content from the name.js. That is because in the name.js we are always requiring from from here we are always requiring from a standard always from the same the build location. If we are able to configure this to change to require from a different location, right? If this is able to if there is a way to send a prefix and then relative path
Right.
path for the build, then we will be able to prefix with that and then do that. So that's the reason I have copied to it.
And
So
why
I'm
do we
looking
need
for
to why do we need to compile it to a different place? Is it
I thought it is a good idea to compile to a different place. Like I'm open for suggestions.
well, I just, could we compile the single, like it's basically like we want to just make that binding.jip only have a subset of the things, right? And I'm
Right.
just wondering, like, is there a reason to have it in a different place versus just having it default to the same one?
Yeah. So yes. So exactly for that reason, right? Like say if somebody has run the pre-unit separately by mistake or for some reason, and then this binding, if they run the npm test, after that it is going to just fail for everything, right? I thought because this is going to be a subset, the generated build is going to be a subset of the original build. I thought it could be generated in a separate location.
Another thing to consider, I think, is if you finish this off, right, and you have this polished and accepted and so forth, then we can just basically redirect the test folder to just be a special run of unit test with everything turned on. So then we just simply run our unit tests your way always, right? And
right. Yeah.
we can just we just have like a like a Christmas tree configuration with everything turned on, and then that's what we have now.
It would basically be like, no filter.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so, and if you specify a filter, then it will narrow down. But I think even in that case, just having it still use the same location, the same binding dot, like the only reason I could think of wanting to have them go to different places is if there's some value in like having multiple copies at the same time.
Okay. I get your point. Okay.
So can we not when all is said and done, just so I understand, can we not simply rename unit test to test and call it a day, and then just get rid of test because it already covers everything, and then we can just move the contents of test under unit test, and then we'll just have the new framework for running the tests
with an extra option of a filter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That would be where we'd like to get to, I think. Yeah, that makes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But for what you're doing now, it makes total sense to have separate things to work on that. But yeah, in the end, it would be nice to just say, yeah, we've got a test, and somehow like through environment variables or whatever the easiest way is, you can specify a filter. Probably on the command line, we'd like to be able to say npm run test, and then here's the name of a particular test or directory or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's what we have now, right? Except it's with unit test rather than test.
But what that would mean is that the binding so right now I have a binding.gyp where I've changed things slightly, right? Basically,
nice.
the file the build sources is getting injected with what we want to run, the filter condition, right? Do you think that that can be? So in that case, I will have to change the binding.gyp here as well.
It would have to be able to generate, like, if there's no filter, it would have to be able to find and insert everything.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I think is still a good thing. That means it's less work when we add a new test, right?
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think having your own playground created from scratch for making this work is perfect, because then you do not interfere with the existing testing infrastructure, and you build up a completely parallel testing infrastructure from scratch, basically, but in such a way that we can then simply just switch over to it whenever we want to, right? And then just rename it from like unit test to just test, and then it does what we do today, and the filter argument will then remain viable and usable even for like npm test after we do the rename. So yeah, I think this is a good way to go.
Okay, all right. So yeah, so I'll just walk through. So this is the file that is being called when you run the npm run pre-unit. So the pre-unit runs this file, and this invokes a child process, node.js rebuild, so that we can inject whatever we want to run. So we take the filter conditions, parse the filter conditions. Right now, it's just taking one, right? Only the first one, essentially the very first one. But we can parse it and pass more arguments, right? And then inject everything as a env variable, right? And then I have a separate binding.jp, right? And I'm injecting the parsed values into here, and then here Gabriel from the Gabriel had provided a IoT node link last time. So similar to that, I'm having a workflow. So what it means is that I have the target, the binding target, the build target is actually dependent on generate. Right? So there I have generate binding.cc, which is getting invoked. The action part of it invokes generate binding.cc, which goes and generates this file, right? So inside this, I have multiple maps, because if you look at our binding.cc, I think we have some versions, right? For node NAPI v5, NAPI v3, that is something that is available. For NAPI v5, something that is available. So that kind of version checks, I have to enable them. So I have put them in separate maps. And then and one more thing is to like map the file name, right? The file name that is coming in with the export object name, right? Because in some cases it's not something that can be created on the fly, because in some cases it's completely different. Like async worker persistent, the export name is persistent async worker, right? So it's not even like a camel case thing that we can modify to a different capitalized format. So I'm just,
is that something we could fix by changing the tests?
Okay. Is it okay?
Like, could we change the names of the tests and all that to? I mean, this might be the good first step, but I'm curious. Like, could we rename tests to and remove this extra step?
Yes, I think so, because it is only test, right? It's not the actual code that we are exporting.
Yeah, like the tests, we can change our names however we want, really.
Yeah. This basically the combing through the test like this will expose these inconsistencies that were allowed so far because we were doing everything by hand. But yeah, ultimately we'd wanna remove all these maps. So as you discover these inconsistencies, feel free to go and rename things so that you don't need this map anymore.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
And even that renaming could be done separately, right? Like, I don't see any problem with a couple PRs to say let's just rename in advance to make things more consistent, more predictable.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
And so that you could start to do sort of in parallel, and then say, okay, well, now I've got the tests in a shape that makes it easier to do this. Because
in general, when you work on a large feature like this, there's usually a trickle of PRs that seem unrelated to those not working on this feature, but are nevertheless useful to the project, and because of that, they will be accepted, even though it seems like a trivial or unrelated change or whatever. And I mean, if you get pushback saying, why are you doing this? This is completely useless. Then you say, yes, but I'm working on this larger thing, and that in itself is a good reason. So yeah, just make the small PRs, and then it'll make your job easier with this big feature as you rebase on top.
It's a lot easier for us to look at those and say, okay, this is like, we know is not a change to the test. It's just a change to the naming. And then when the actual functional thing you have comes, it's a lot easier to look at and understand, okay, it's just this, this is
Exactly.
all that's changing, rather than like, oh no, there's 100 files being changed, right?
Yeah,
Now
exactly.
I can understand what all that means. And
Yeah, makes it also
yeah.
makes your final diff a lot smaller. Yeah, I guess that's
Exactly,
I think
yeah.
that's what Michael is saying.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't understand is why do you need to call node.js rebuild from JavaScript?
I can do a node.js build. Is that
No,
what
no,
you are
no, no, no,
talking?
no. It's not. It's not that what it is that you're calling. It's why do you need to call it at all? Because like this minus filter argument, right? This
Yeah.
comes all the way from the user, from the command line, right? So
Yes. Yes.
so the variable npm config filter is available in binding.js already, right?
Right.
So oh, I see. Correct me if I'm wrong. You need to call this by hand because npm doesn't call it for you, right? Like npm will call will start node.js if you're doing like binding.js, but you're not doing binding.js. You're doing like unit test /
Right.
binding.js.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So correct. Also, then correct me if I'm wrong. In the end, we're not going to need to call node.js ourselves because this will be the binding.js, right? So this part of the script we will not need. You will just simply say npm test minus filter.
With what you said previously, like if this is going to be the new testing infrastructure, then we'll just move it out, move the binding.js out, and then we wouldn't need this file anymore.
Right. But what I'm saying is, with the current testing infrastructure, right? We don't need to. We don't, as far as I know, we don't call node.js rebuild anywhere ourselves. We let npm do it for us, right?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
But sometimes you got to try and force that, right?
What do you mean?
Well, I guess
we
right
do
now
have
it's
a
basically
node.js rebuild here.
right.
Yeah, pretest. In your pretest, you have node.js.
Oh yeah, okay. Oh yeah, we do. Yeah, you're right.
Right. And that's why that's part of the problem is it does that every single time and compiles everything.
Right. Okay, but right. Okay, but if node.js rebuild supported like if node.js pre-build had like the binding.js that is being run by node.js rebuild, right? If that thing had the code that you said now at the top where it creates like the list of sources, right? Then that code that creates the list of sources at the top could access the npm config filter variable, and then you wouldn't need to run binding.js yourself, right?
You could, I guess, if I understand what you're saying, you could have a step which would be like filter. You could like npm run filter tests and provide a list that would generate your binding.js, and then everything else could run the same way it does today.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So okay, can I share my screen briefly?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. It's a slightly different model. Like you wouldn't specify the filter when you do the test, but you're likely to run the same. You're likely to want to reuse the same filter a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So kind of setting the filter as a step. Yeah. Okay.
So let's see here. We have package JSON. Right. Okay. So we have right now what we have is this, and then in here we have a binding JIP, right? So here we just have like a static list of sources, right?
Yeah.
But if we replaced this static list of sources with like a, if we had a variables section here at the top,
which is what Deepak has, right?
Exactly. But elsewhere, like if we had that list of variables at the top here that generates this list, and then here you would make a reference to that variable, then we would have the dynamic source list that Deepak is working on, right? And we would have the node.js call from. We would have the node.js call. We could reuse the node.js call from right here, right? So I guess what I'm asking is, oh my goodness, from right here, which is very far away because it's at the bottom of this file, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, so this node JIP rebuild business, right? So basically, I guess what I'm asking is, you know, you could just move that execution of node JIP rebuild to here, right? And then you wouldn't need a JavaScript file that does it.
Okay.
But actually, Deepak, can you just share what you were showing us again? Because I'm wondering if we can map it back to that.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
This is the one, and this is the file. Like,
right. So
yeah,
that binding.cc that you have there. Can you show us your version of, or binding.jip, right? So is it, no, it's the binding.jip.
This is the generated binding.cc. You want to go to the binding.gyp?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Because yeah, I think so. That's the one that it's already, click on that one. That one you've already modified to.
Yeah.
To use a reference. Is that what I remember seeing?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So, okay. So.
I'm just wondering, like, if it's as simple as
we don't have this, right? The generating. So in the existing test infrastructure, we don't have to generate a binding.cc. Right?
I guess is like, does the file get generated as part of the node JIP rebuild? Like, is that where your generate step takes place? Okay.
Yeah. That's the problem. Like, I need a separate binding.gui because I have to generate this. I need a generate step.
But actually, couldn't you just run generate binding CC directly? With the filter?
Oh yeah, we could do the binding generate. Yeah, we could do that.
I'm just wondering if there was like a new target, which was basically like npm run filter, and you'd specify your, and then if it generated everything that was needed.
Okay.
Could you then run the existing npm run test, which would do the pre-JIP build and then run the test? I don't know if that would work.
Yeah. I think it depends on how we can organize this here, right? Like, probably what you are suggesting is can we do so when we run so basically if we are going to remove this whole thing and have just test.
I think I got it. Okay, so your pre-unit says node. Okay, let's see. Your pre-unit says node unit test minus filter, right? So what that basically is it runs a script called unit test /index.js or unit test.js, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So go back to the package JSON.
Okay.
Okay. So your node instead of pre-unit, you could say node JIP rebuild -c unit test, right?
Okay.
So then it would be exactly like the pre-test that we have. Like if you said node unit test or sorry, node JIP rebuild -c unit test, right? If you changed this, it just change it just for argument's sake.
Yeah.
Rebuild.
Assuming you have your other stuff checked in, right?
Yeah. Like don't. Yeah. So -c unit test. Yes. Okay, unit test. Yeah. So now let's say you do this. Okay. Now go to unit test /binding.jip.
Sorry.
Go to unit test /binding.jip. No, in that list of files, like you had, I think, code open or something. Yeah. So now under unit test, you have a binding.jip, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Click on that. Okay. So now go to the top. Okay. So now here you say node -p instead of saying at where you say sources, right? You say node -p process and files to run. You see that?
Yeah. A filter.
Yeah. Okay.
You want to put
either one. Yeah. No. Yes, but not quite. Instead, what you will say is no, because the problem is if you put filter there, then it doesn't look right because it's like commas and stuff. You need to process the filter, right, to get a list of files.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what you can do here is instead of node -p process env right, you can say node -e, right, and then the name of a file, node -e create file list.js.
Oh, okay. Got your point.
See?
Okay, yeah, I got your point.
And then that produces, and then the standard output of node -e, or just simply node generate file list.js, the output, the standard output of that will become this list.
Yeah, I got your point. Yeah.
Okay, and then you don't need to run node.js rebuild from JavaScript because you're running it straight from package.json.
Yeah, we don't need this then. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, cool. Yeah, if you can do it that way, then it would be completely equivalent to what we have now,
Sure,
only
I'll
with
do
a
that.
different directory.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's a good idea. Okay. All right.
Okay. Is that anything else you wanted to take us through, or questions?
So I'm right now generating. The one thing I want to point out is I'm just kind of generating it this way. Do you think like I should put in a template? I don't think we need a template, right? Like I can just push contents and then write them directly. We don't need a template for this, right? Because this doesn't need to be neat. The generated file does not need to be neat or anything.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And if we want to make it neat, we can just use Clang format and call it a day. Yeah. So yes, it can be ugly.
What format?
Oh, there's a tool called Clang CLANG -format.
Okay.
And then that will nicify it for you basically.
Okay.
But this isn't checked in, is it?
In this case, I've checked in, but it wouldn't be just yesterday I added a git ignore. So
right. So it would be generated on the fly.
Yeah.
So people shouldn't really be looking at the file anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
No,
okay.
Yeah, except for debugging purposes.
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Well, it's great to see you're making some good progress and good, interesting discussion. Okay, so I'm just going to go flip us back to what we were looking at. We only have, we only have 2 minutes left. So at this point, I think I'm just going to say, like, are there any key issues that people think we should talk about either in the Node add-on repo or core?
Okay. I have a paragraph on Node API headers. I added some documentation. If you take a look, and
what was that? API headers?
Node API headers.
Right. Okay. Sorry, just going there. Okay. So this one basically, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I added these new docs, and if you have time to review, then we can publish this module on npm like we discussed last week. And on Node.js API, I think that it's time for a new release. So I opened a new issue, because we have some fixes and some new feature. So yeah, if you are good, I can go for this new release.
It definitely sounds good to me. Are there any things that people want to get in before the release that we think is important?
Yeah, so I will wait 2-3 days. So, and if you don't have anything to add, we can publish the release. It's almost 2 months from last release.
Right. I'm just taking a very quick look. I don't see anything that jumps out to me. So that sounds like, yeah, if anybody thinks of something in the next couple of days, otherwise we should just go with what we've got already.
Okay.
Okay, any other issues like that we should quickly cover? If not, thanks for everybody's time, and we'll see you in GitHub next week.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.